Random Geezer Thoughts, Saturday, March 22nd, 2025. If this is your first time checking out the Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of the Gig Geezer, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I am on the second half of 2 delivery opportunities that I'm doing today. The first was delivering 2 tool chests of varied sizes. The combined weight was like 335 pounds. The first one weighed then 195, and the second one weighed like 140 pounds. I may be off with these numbers though, but suffice to say that the combined weight was like 335 pounds. The trick to that particular opportunity was using your brain, in that knowing that how I saw that order bounce around on the various last mile gig delivery apps throughout the day. But apparently when I saw it, it was the most of what I'd seen at any time. One time I saw it for $34.35, and maybe it went up to $38. I got it for $47.25. There was a time though when that particular type of an order of those items would have gone for, I want to say at least $75. $75 is probably not out of the realm of memory of that. But since I'm saying this is a random geezer thoughts, the other thought was, some people, some content creators elaborate on the type of people whom they deal with, the people that they encounter. And this particular guy happens to be in transport himself. He had an 18-wheeler parked along the side of his property, and I backed into his driveway, but he'd asked me if I could come back around through the side fence, which gave me entry into his backyard. I'll just say this much. It is highly likely, based on what, at least based on his mannerisms, some of the things that did come out of his mouth, and a couple of other tells, that he would be the complete antithesis of me. He would not be the type of person that I would seek out in terms of engaging in any cordial conversation. But what's interesting is that you don't always have to like somebody to get the job done. The person does not have to be aligned completely with you to complete your job. And I think that's where the term professionalism comes in. I often would say that as an insurance agent, and I'm not going to go into exactly what I would say, but I will say this much. I mentioned this in a recent Gig Geezer segment. People can tell if you know what you're doing, and people do respect when you do things the right way. And I think that was the bottom line. I did things the right way, in such a way that he was okay with the delivery of his items, which were, here on the inset, 2 different types of tool chests. Now, the second half of this delivery opportunity, and this is the reason why I'm in the F-150, is because I am on my way to a catering delivery opportunity. Very easy one. I'm supposed to go by fast food place, pick up some food, and drop it off at a venue at the main university's campus. The 2 delivery orders paid a combined then $100 and change. The catering opportunity is paying $53.25, and the delivery opportunity, the other delivery opportunity, paid $47 and change. Those 2 opportunities are going to take me right at about 2 hours and 15 minutes to complete. I left the house at 2:45. It's now going on. It's about just a little after 4:15. So I've been at it an hour and a half, and I'm en route to earning $100 already. And that's going to be it for me today. And then that'll be it for me this week. Now, I'm going to go into another random geezer thought. In fact, what I will do is I will resume by elaborating on some things from the catering pickup location. But what I do want to elaborate at this moment, as I'm still driving to the pickup location, is that there's been a little, I'm not going to say there's been a little bit of conversation. There probably hasn't, though, but I brought it up in a recent Get Geezer upload about local delivery opportunities. In fact, I have in a couple of recent Get Geezer uploads talked about local delivery opportunities, some of the advantages that are within those opportunities. And one of them is the fact that you can make money and not have to drive a lot of miles. You can make money and may not have to spend a lot of time. I would venture to say that there were folk who would gladly say that they earned, as what I'm doing, $100 in a couple hours, just to take over two hours. So that means that I will have earned like just under $50 an hour. I, for one, don't like talking on those terms, dollars per hour, because those are connotations of W-2 type work. And at the same time, it's also some people's ways of rationalizing having taken on some bad delivery opportunities, but then they try to smooth it out by saying, look at what I earned over this course of time, or look at what I earned today. That first delivery opportunity, I can only talk in terms of loaded miles. It was like 11 miles. This one is going to be like 3 or 4 about 4 miles total. So altogether, 15 loaded miles will have earned me $100. And for some, that's a big fucking deal. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm not saying total miles, because now I've made the term of reference of CJ miles. And this is no knock on CJ, and I think CJ would probably accept this as true. What I'm pointing out in an objective sense is that CJ has been very strategic about what he's done in terms of setting up opportunities or accepting opportunities in his market. And he happens to be where a lot of action is. Where I'm at in my market, things are pretty well spread out. And I've mentioned this on many occasions. It is highly conceivable you can drive 20 minutes and cover 20 miles. In fact, that's almost what's happening with this. While it may take me 15 minutes, in fact, I'm like, as I'm talking, I'm close to halfway to the pickup location. I will have driven, however, over 10 miles to get there, like 10 to 15 miles just to get to the pickup location, because that's just the way it is. Where I'm at, I'm actually where I live, where the Geezer compound is. I live as you're leaving the Columbia, South Carolina metropolitan area. And so that means I have to drive back in to various places within the metropolitan area for pickup locations. And so this is where the argument of deadhead miles, deadhead miles, yes, from a business perspective, you can count the deadhead miles because those are miles driven to complete your work. And as I've mentioned in earlier Get Geezer segments or uploads, how mileage is a 1099's best friend. And if you haven't filed your taxes for the year 2024, you will find out, if you do your taxes correctly, how mileage can be your best friend. And for past reference about mileage, you can check out this segment of the Get Geezer. So, does that mean that does it mean then that the Get Geezer is looking to shift to do more local work? It is highly conceivable, yes, because I've mentioned how I want to expand and really develop the cash game. The cash game will involve more local stuff. The cash game then would involve more stuff that does not take in a lot, that does not require a lot of miles driven. So then from a business standpoint, if you're driving less miles, that means from a tax standpoint, that means you're going to have to really be smart with how you run your business in terms of, at least this is what I foresee. And this is what I mentioned in this segment of the Gig Geezer. If you're not driving miles, you're going to have to be very smart with how you run your business in terms of tax obligation. Because you can make a lot of money, and if you don't have a lot of deductions, guess what? You're going to owe some taxes unless you got a very adept tax professional. What has helped me out over the last couple of years, particularly since I've ventured into the delivery and transport space, is that as I've mentioned, is that I have a lot of legitimate deductions. I have a lot of legitimate deductions. They also factor into my cost per mile. As a result, my cost per mile is probably at a minimum twice as many operators of spinner/cargo vans or operators in the delivery and transport space, because I count a lot of things towards it. But at the same time, my tax obligation is what it is, and I'll leave it at that. Although I have shown in the past, and I'll make reference to that video again, I've shown based on past years' tax returns how if you compare my earnings to a W-2 based on that top line of the 1040 Schedule C, and if you were to compare it to a W-2, assuming that all they could take were the standard deductions and then the pre-tax deductions, myself as a 1099 actually would pay less taxes. Okay, so I've picked up, as you see on the inset, I've picked up the catering order, and now I am heading to the drop-off location. I'm probably about halfway there. I referred back to the app, and the official miles according to the app is 4.25 miles, so 4 miles. And for those dollar per hour people or dollar per mile people, that comes out to over $13 a mile. Okay, so it's over $13 a mile, but I'm looking at it as just a couple quick hit opportunities. But I want to end this particular segment of the Gig Geezer actually repeating a point that I brought out in a video that I've made reference to already on 3 occasions from a couple years ago. For all those of you who are big sticklers about wear and tear on my vehicle and miles put on my vehicle and depreciation, let me hip you to this. I worked at a car lot 20 years ago. Let's just say I've worked at a couple of car lots in my time, and one thing that we knew in the car business was that as soon as you drive your vehicle off the lot, it's already lost value. As soon as you shake hands with someone with purchasing a vehicle, even if it's a cash purchase, the value has dropped. Okay? And depreciation is more of an accounting term that you have to use those numbers correctly, or they can come back in the form of an IRS audit, at least traditionally speaking. So this is where miles, the advantage of just miles, claiming miles, is probably far more useful than depreciation. Again, depreciation is an accounting term, and so you're counting with respect to depreciation. You're looking at amortizing the value of the vehicle over a period of time, and there may be certain tax advantages, but I don't see, at least for me and my the model of operations, that it's of any advantage for me. With that said, so you talk about your concern of miles driven, wear and tear, and depreciation. And as I pointed out 2 years ago, I'll point out again, and this is something I've said in private. I have never seen many W-2s complain about whatever distance they have to drive to get to their W-2 whenever they have to go to work. I can tell you, as a W-2 or as a hybrid W-2, as an insurance agent, when I worked as a captive agent, I drove, for example, 45 minutes to an hour in one direction, depending on where it was, to that agency. Not once did I complain about those miles driven. The only thing I complained about was traffic. And so, all I was concerned about was making sure that my car worked, that it had gas in it, so I can get to that job day in and day out. You concern yourself about supposedly wear and tear. Yes, there can be wear and tear on your vehicle just commuting to that W-2 on a daily basis. Let's say you're stuck in traffic you're in a large metropolitan area, a densely populated metropolitan area. You're in a metropolitan area where its infrastructure is horrible, and so you're dealing with traffic on a daily basis. There's wear and tear on your vehicle with that starting and stopping. Yes. But I guess maybe W-2s don't think of it in those terms. Even in the delivery and transport space, I hear people talking about beating up their vehicle. Well, yes, you can beat up your vehicle if you're not taking care of your vehicle, and also the type of driving that you're using your vehicle for. If you're hauling heavy stuff and you're driving up and down hills, yes, you're putting a big strain on your vehicle. At some point, you can wear out the engine, you can wear out the transmission. But if you're not hauling heavy stuff and you're not driving up and down a bunch of hills, guess what? You're not going to put a lot of strain on your engine, especially if you're driving with sense. And what I mean by that, you're not driving 100 miles an hour on that vehicle, on that engine. If you're driving, let's say 65 miles an hour, you're not putting a big strain on that engine. The RPMs and the data will back me up on that. Especially like I'm in the F-150. If I drive 70 miles an hour in the F-150, this engine is running at about 1,750 RPM at the most. That's not a big strain on the engine. That's comparatively speaking barely working up a good idle. That's comparatively speaking, that's barely putting a good sweat on the engine. It's not, and this is and for whatever's worth, this is a V8 engine. So therefore, 1,750 RPM is not a big pull on the engine and transmission. But I'm not gonna. I said that these are random thoughts, and I'm pretty sure that what I've put together now would be construed as random thoughts by an old geezer. And also, I'm right down the street from the drop-off location, which is nearby the main university. It, by the way, happens to be for a visiting collegiate softball team, women's softball team catering order. So that's all I have to share for this particular segment of Get Geezer. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if you like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm in Wood Lane as always. May your grind and may your hustle continue.